Today's gospel is a pivotal point in the Gospel of Matthew. For the previous 15 chapters, the disciples have been with Jesus, if you will, kind of training to be disciples, learning about him, watching him, just as residents and interns in the medical profession follow and watch the master doctor. And they come to this time and this place. From this point on, Jesus will talk more and more about the cross and about how anybody who would follow him has to pick up and carry the cross. The place where this takes place is also important. Caesarea Philippi is in the northernmost part of modern-day Israel. It's practically on the border with Lebanon. And it's a spot where one cannot help but be struck by its beauty. In the distance, you see the snow-capped Mount Hermon. And this part of the Holy Land is the source of the Jordan River. And so it's lush, it's full of woods, it's full of running water. But besides that, hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus was there, it was a place given to the god Pan. And then still later, closer to Jesus' time, in that same area, Philip, the tetrarch or king in that area, a relative of Herod, built a city dedicated to Caesar. Thus it's called Caesarea Philippi. Caesar, for all practical purposes, saw himself as God. And everybody in the Roman Empire knew that at some level. So it's in this place, this scene, where Jesus gets the disciples away and he asks them a really important question, the most important question. Who do people say that I am? And then he makes it more immediate. He says to them and to us, who am I to you? Who am I to you? We've all been through this in friendship, in dating relationships. There comes a point when people ask that question. Who am I to you? And it's the moment of truth. And it's a difficult question. If you remember the play Fiddler on the Roof, at a certain point, the wife says to the husband, do you love me? Or he says to her, do you love me? And she says, are you feeling all right? Why don't you go lay down? You know, you're upset. But the question persists. Do you love me? So Jesus is not asking the disciples a pop quiz where they give the right answer. He's asking, after this time with you, what do I mean to you? And Peter is given the grace to answer the truth. You are the Christ. In other words, you are the anointed one of God. In you, I believe, the fullness of God lives. And that's the significance of Jesus. But as I was thinking about this gospel, I wondered, well, if we were there and Jesus asked one of us, what would we say? Would we so assuredly say, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God? Maybe. But I think a lot of us would say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And what does that I'm not sure mean? Well, it means that faith is not just having a whole list of answers to questions. Faith is something much deeper, more mysterious, and at times elusive. Which one of us hasn't wondered at times, do I have faith? Do I have enough faith? And in today's world, I would contend, it's understandable that at times our faith does not feel so sure. We live in a world where a lot of people claim to be religious, claim to be followers of Christ, but they're about as far away from we are as you can imagine. So what we know is we're all capable of molding even faith to serve us rather than to serve the living God. Faith can always be domesticated. So today we live in a world where people talk about the prosperity gospel. You could follow Jesus and have it all at the same time. There's no problem. Except there is a problem. That's not what Jesus really stood for or talked about. So that's one piece of it. But we also know that there's a world of darkness and sin and evil. And sometimes that is something we struggle with and stumble over. How could God allow such suffering at times? How can God allow thousands and thousands of people to go hungry every day? How could God allow some of the terrible things we see in our world? And so the problem of evil also makes it sometimes harder to believe. So what do we do? What do we do? A few simple suggestions. One, we continually pray for greater faith. We need to continually ask the Lord to help us know Him. Know Him. That's the prayer of Ignatius. Help me to know, love, and serve you, Lord, so I can follow you. Thomas Merton, the great monk, when he became a Catholic and was baptized, his friend asked him, well, what kind of Catholic do you want to be? And Merton said, I think I want to be a pretty good one. And his friend, Bob Lack, said, that's the wrong answer. What you should say is, I want to be a saint. And Merton was flummoxed and said, well, how do you do that? He said, you ask for it. You ask for it. So the first thing is we need to keep asking Jesus to continue to reveal who He is to us so that we can become fascinated by Him, intrigued by Him, just as in our lives we can become fascinated and intrigued by all sorts of people. And some of them become close to us. The second thing is to learn more about Jesus. And the place to go, obviously, are the Gospels, the Scriptures. And nowadays there are lots of ways of doing it, not to become a Bible scholar, but simply to pay attention. What does Jesus say? What does He stand for? Who is He with? Where does He go? What does He do? Until we can know Jesus, St. Jerome says, we can't say we know Jesus unless we know the Scriptures. It's a challenge for us. And thirdly, the church says that we can come to know Jesus, we can actually meet Him in the Word of God, which we have just heard, in the sacraments, in this Mass, in this Eucharist. Christ is with us. We can receive Him. Christ also is in the community of the church. So when we're tempted to go it alone, we're separating ourselves from the risen Christ. And finally, Christ is in the poor. So whatsoever we do, what would we say if Jesus said to each one of us, looked us in the eye, who am I to you? I think I'd feel inadequate, not up to the question. I think probably some of you would too. But that's just a starting point. So what will we do to be better disciples, to know Jesus in a deeper way, and to follow Him more totally?